So for this tutorial, you'll need some rulers. I'm using my yardstick and another ruler. You'll need about 3 yards of fabric. Well, I'm using 3 yards of fabric. You'll need 2 different types of elastic. You'll need 1/2 inch and 1 inch. Now, I prefer to use non-rolling elastic because it makes my life so much easier when inserting just elastic in general, and when you're doing multiple pieces, you don't want that elastic twisting and turning, so non-roll is your best friend. You'll also need some sewing pins, some coordinating thread, some fabric scissors, a marking tool to mark your fabric. You'll need some safety pins to insert your elastic. I have a larger one for my 1 inch and a little bit smaller one for my 1/2 inch elastic. You also need a seam gauge, or you can use, you already know if you've been watching my tutorials, I love using index cards. And you'll need some painter's tape. Now, we'll be putting this on our sewing machine when we're making our elastic casings. And you'll need a pocket pattern. So if you are subscribed to my blog, then you already have access to my pocket pattern. Yeah. All right, so let's go ahead and jump right in. All right, so the first thing you want to do is lay out your fabric. Make sure that the selvage edge to the selvage edge is here on this side. I have my raw edge up here, and then I have my fabric on the fold down here. And I have the right sides on the inside. The first measurement that we're going to do is doing the width of our fabric. So the width of my skirt needs to be 21 inches, so I'm going to go ahead and mark that. Alright, after you have your first width line made, now it's time to measure down the length. So for me, that is 49 inches. So from my width line, I'm taking my measuring tape and I'm measuring down 49 inches. Alright, and then I'm going to take a pin to signal where that is. And I'm going to let myself know that 49 inches is at this pin here. And then you could double check, make sure it's accurate. Yep, 49. Alright, now from this pin, I'm going to measure over my width again of 21 inches. Alright, and then next we need to connect our width lines together to help us cut accurately. Now my ruler is not that long, so to help me out right here in the center, I'm going to do another width line. I'm going to mark another width line of 21 inches. So how I'm going to do that is, so between these two, doesn't have to be exactly the middle, just find somewhere. Then I'm going to measure over 21 inches. And then I'm not going to mark it here, just right up at the top of my ruler is where I'm going to make a mark. Alright, and then now that's going to help me accurately make my rectangle now. So now I'm going to connect these points. Alright, now go ahead and grab your scissors and go ahead and cut out your rectangle. This leftover space here, after cutting out my rectangle, is where I'm going to cut out my pockets. So we need a total of 4 of these. So I'm going to cut it out once, and then cut it out a second time, and then marking the notches for the pockets. Alright, so I went ahead and readjusted my fabric. I'm taking my first skirt panel and I'm laying it right on top. So my fabric is still the same on the fold, raw edge, selvage edge. So I'm taking my first skirt panel and laying it right on top of the rest of my fabric, lining up the raw edge and the fold here. Now, if you don't feel comfortable putting your skirt panel on top and recutting, you can always go ahead and take your measurements again and measure down your length and your width, whatever you feel most comfortable for you. And make sure everything is nice and neat before you begin cutting. So double check that when you readjusted your fabric, that those 2 pieces are nicely lined up. And then make sure that your panel is nicely lined up. And before you begin cutting, one tip to help you feel more comfortable, you can take some pins and you can pin in all 4 corners. You can add additional pins there, or if you have any pattern weights, you can use that. Use what you got. So really take your time to smooth out all of your fabric. I did that off camera to save time, but just make sure that you smooth everything out. Alright, now I can begin cutting. Alright, now I'm going to use the remaining piece for my drawstring. Now, I kept my piece intact for both skirt panels after doing my pockets earlier, so I have a really long piece. So I'm going to just be able to cut mine out on the fold. So I'm going to take one of my pieces, because right now I have 2. All I need is 1. And I'm going to now take this one single piece and I'm going to fold it in half. Now, if you don't have enough fabric to be able, a long enough piece to be able to cut yours out on the fold, it's okay. You'll have to do 2 pieces and you'll just be able to make a seam. So no worries. Alright, so my drawstring needs to be my length is 35 inches when being cut on the fold. Or if you're cutting 2 pieces, it's still that length. So I'm going to measure that. Alright, well, see, mine is only 34 inches, but I'm just going to take that 34 inches. I'm not about to make a big deal out of it. So I'm going to go ahead and draw that line. Alright, and then the width, we need to have 2 inches. So I'm going to measure over 2 inches and make a mark. I'm going to do the same down here at the bottom, measure over 2 inches and make a mark. Alright, now I'm going to connect my 2 points. Alright, now I'm going to take my scissors and I'm going to go ahead and cut this out. Alright, let's take inventory of our pieces. So you should have 2 skirt panels. You should have your drawstring. So you should have 2 or 1 pieces if you weren't able to cut yours out on the fold. And you should have a total of 4 pocket pieces. Alright, so the next thing that you can go ahead and do is finish off your raw edges with your serger or zigzag stitch, or however you prefer to finish off your pockets and the raw edges of your skirt panel. No need for the drawstring because the raw edges will be hidden on the inside, and I will show you how to do that. Alright, next go ahead and lay one of your skirt panels with the right side facing up. Grab 2 of your pockets and we're going to attach them to the side seam. Now what you want to do is grab your ruler, and from the top edge of your panel you want to measure down 7 1/4 of an inch. So from the top I've measured down 7 1/4 of an inch, and I went ahead and put a pin there to mark that. Then I'm going to take my pocket and I'm going to line up the top edge of the pocket with that 7 1/4 of an inch. And then now I'm going to place some pins on the side seam. Alright, and then repeat the process on the other side. From the top down, measure 7 1/4 of an inch. I've marked it with a pin, taking my pocket, lining it up with that mark that I made with my pin, and now I'm just going to pin down in place. Alright, go ahead and line up the edge of your, what is this, the pocket? Alright, either starting at the top or bottom of your pocket, line up the edge with 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, lower your needle, begin sewing, back stitch, and keep sewing until you get to the other end of the pocket. Alright, now I'm on the other pocket. I'm going to repeat the process. I have, this time I'm starting at the bottom. And I have that lined up with 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. I've lowered my needle, sewing, back stitch, and keep sewing until you get to the end. Alright, now you want to go ahead and repeat this same exact process for your other skirt panel. Next, what you want to go ahead and do is press your pockets going out away from your skirt panel. After you have done that, now lay one of your skirt panels with the right side facing up. Take the other one and you're going to lay it right on top. Now the right sides are facing each other. Go ahead and line them up from the top, line them up at the pocket, and also here at the side seam area. Grab your pins and let's start pinning this in place. So first I'm going to place a pin right here at the top, making sure everything is nicely lined up. Then at the top of the pocket, I'm also going to place a pin. Now I want to find that top notch that we made in the pocket, and I'm going to place a pin there. Now I'm going to make my way to the bottom of the pocket, right where it should be lined up with each other, and I'm going to place a pin. Next I'm going to find that bottom notch in the pocket and place a pin there. Add some additional pins around the pocket area. And now what you want to do is continue pinning all the way down to the end of the skirt. Alright, the next thing that we're going to do is take this to our sewing machine. We'll start at the bottom of our skirt, We're going to sew up until we get to this bottom notch in our pocket. We'll make our way around and stop here. Then we will do another stitch starting at the top of the skirt, and we will sew down until we get to the top notch in our pocket. Alright, I'm starting at the bottom edge of the skirt. I have my side seam lined up with 1/2 inch seam allowance. Lowering my needle, begin sewing, back stitch, and we're going to keep sewing straight up until we get to that bottom notch in our pocket. Alright, I've reached the bottom notch in my pocket. I'm going to leave my needle in my fabric, lift up my presser foot, and turn. I'm going to make sure that my pocket is lined back up with my 1/2 inch. And I'm going to lower my presser foot back down and continue sewing. And make sure you're using your hands to pivot around the curve of the pocket. Alright, now I'm starting at the top edge of the skirt. The side seam is lined up with 1/2 inch seam allowance. I'm going to lower my needle, begin sewing, back stitch, and I'm going to continue sewing until I get to that top notch in the pocket. Alright, I'm at the top notch. I'm going to go ahead and back stitch. Sew forward and back stitch. Alright, now you want to go ahead and repeat this process on the other side of your skirt. Alright, the next thing that you need to do is press your side seams. So choose which one of the skirt panels you would like to be the front and which one you would like to be the back. And then press both of your seams going in that direction. So after you have pressed that, the next thing that you want to do, just to hold your pockets down in place, I'm going to use a pin to baste it, and I've only put it through one layer. That's why I stuck my hand in here. I just put it through one layer, and this is just basting it down without having to do a stitch. Okay, so now we have the front part of our skirt, and the other side is going to be now called the back. What we now need to do is create the casing for the elastic. So grab an index card or your seam gauge. Now if you are using an index card that is 4 inches by 6 inches, then what you could do is take your index card, and from the top you just want to fold it over. So let me clarify something. This is the right side, this is the wrong side. And you can just take the top edge, fold it over, and it covers up the whole entire card, and that's 4 inches, and you would just press that down in place. Now if you don't, another way that you can do it, if you want to actually see a piece sticking out and you like identifying a line, what you can do is from the top of your index card, flip it the other way, measure down 4 inches, and then take the top edge, fold it over, and create a 4-inch casing. And you want to do that across the entire top edge of your skirt, creating a 4-inch casing all the way around. Alright, the next thing that you want to do is take your skirt and turn it to the right side facing out. And make sure that you're looking at the front skirt panel piece. You know that it is the front panel piece because you can see your pins that you use to baste your skirt in place. That's why we only pinned through one layer to help us identify that. So I know that this is my front skirt panel. Alright, so we did create our casing, but you don't want it to stay like that. You want to flip it out, and you want to make sure it's out of your way because we need to do the buttonholes for our drawstring, and you won't be able to get your drawstring through if you sew on both layers. So we're only working on a single layer. Alright, the next thing that you want to do is find the center front. When I cut out my fabric, I did press the fold, but if you need to find the center front, just fold your fabric in half and then see where the center meets. Alright, so I zoomed in a little bit closer. So this is my center front, and then here is the crease that we made for our casing. Now what you want to do is from your casing, you want to measure down 1 6/8 of an inch. So I have my ruler lined up with that crease, and then I'm finding 6/8 of an inch, and I'm going to make a mark. Okay, also what you want to do is measure down 2 3/8 of an inch and make a mark. Okay, I'm going to make these markings just a little bit longer. Alright, so we're going to put our buttonholes in this area here. So starting at your center front, go ahead and measure over 5/8 of an inch. Okay, and then do the same thing on the opposite side. From your center front point, measure over 5/8 of an inch. Alright, now from this line, go ahead and measure over 1/2 an inch. And then draw a line down the middle to connect those two. Same thing on the other side. From this line, measure over 1/2 an inch and make a mark. Now draw a line to connect these 2 points. Okay, I'm going to be using my automatic button holder. I'm going to be using my automatic buttonhole maker. So what I like to do is take a button that's 1/2 an inch, and I like to insert that so that my machine knows how wide to do the buttonhole. Alright, before actually sewing my buttonholes, I like to do a couple of practice ones. And so I practiced, and I see it's just slightly a little bit bigger than I would like. So another thing that you can do is, if you're using an automatic buttonhole maker, then this space right here is the space of how large your button will be. So by placing a button here, it makes the size for you down here, but you can double check yourself. put this part up against your button. You can do is double check for yourself. So put this area next to your buttonhole and see if it's the same size. Alright, so I put my automatic button holder on my presser foot. I swapped it out, and then I'm going to pull down this lever here. And you want it to be in between those two. So you don't want it to be sitting forward, you don't want it to be sitting behind, you want it to be in between. Alright, now find the buttonhole that you want to do. I'm going to do number 35 on my machine. Then the next thing that you want to do is make sure that your top thread is going through this open hole here. And also, you need to unplug your foot in order for this to work. So take out your presser foot. Alright, so on the buttonhole maker, you see these green lines and these red lines and this center line here. I'm going to take my scrap piece. So start at the end that is closest to you. So there's one line here and there's one line here, right? So start at the one that is closest to you, and then it's going to sew up. It's going to sew up in this direction here. So now slip it under, and what you want to do is this line going down the center, you want that to be lined up with this one here in the center, and then you want this line going across to line up with these ones here going across. Alright, and now double check that this lever is in between your two pieces, or else it's going to get jammed and get stuck. Alright, now go ahead and lower your needle, and then you're going to hit this button here where the arrow is going up. So go ahead and hit that, and then it should begin moving. Okay, let's see how this thing turned out. And there is my buttonhole. Oh, I forgot to mention that this string, I should have pulled my top thread towards me so that it's not there. But yeah, so that is how you do a buttonhole for our drawstring. Alright, so the next thing you want to do is remove your markings. Now I usually don't use this one, but so you all can see, I marked mine and got it off to the best of my ability. So just took one for YouTube, but it'll come off eventually. I usually like to use the chalk roller because the chalk just pretty much dusts off easier than this, but it is what it is. Okay, but at least I got it off from around my buttonholes, and then after I do my stitching, that should go away. What I like to do is take some fray check, and I like to put it in the center of my buttonholes. Now I'm still only working on one layer. The top of my casing is up here, and I did put, I guess I need a new one. I'm putting an index card underneath so that the fray check doesn't make my surface area tacky. While that's drying, I'm going to sew up the drawstring. Alright, for our drawstring, if you had to do two pieces, first you need to connect your two pieces. So if you had to, if you weren't able to cut yours out on the fold, the first thing you want to do is connect yours. So just line it up. I'm not going to show this part. So line it up, the two edges. So a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance to connect those two. Press it and you'll be good to go. Then the next thing that we are going to do is take this to our iron. we're going to fold it in half and press. So all the way down, folding it in half and pressing. Then after you have a nice crease, you want to open it up, take the edge, fold it to meet the crease on both sides, folding it in. So now the raw edges are facing each other. Then you fold it one more time, and then now the raw edges are hidden on the inside, and we will do a stitch to hold this in place. Alright, go ahead and put your regular presser foot back on. Make sure to put that lever back up. Plug your presser foot back in. Go back to your straight stitch, just your normal settings. Put it all back. And then to sew up the drawstring, what you want to do is right along the edge where you folded, you're going to line up your needle there, and you're going to stitch that closed. Now, because my fabric does not lay flat when I'm trying to press this closed, I'm actually just going to make a tube and then turn the tube right sides out. But I did want to show you all that you would just stitch on that line. I mean, you could do 1/4 of an inch if you like. If you need some type of measurement guide, you can use 1/4 of an inch and to close this up. Alright, take your drawstring to your iron and give it a nice press. Alright, once this area is dry, you could take, if you have a buttonhole maker, or if you have, or grab your seam ripper if you don't. So I just take this, and all you have to do is press it right in between the threads, and that will give you a nice clean hole. Or you can take your seam ripper and you can carefully rip in there. Just don't go real slow, because you don't want to yank it too hard and then you end up ripping a hole in your skirt. So go real slow, take it easy, and open up your buttonholes.